Hello and welcome to Tiny Desk Knitting with Emma. Today I'm going to be talking about this jacket or cardigan. It's sort of a cardigan. I mean, it is. It's open, but it doesn't have any buttons because it came out a little small. And I like it as a little cropped jacket. This is the Mioness cardigan by Violet B. McQuaid, which you can find on Ravelry. The pattern was published by Jamieson's of Shetland. And so obviously it's intended to be knit with their yarn. I knit this between November and the beginning of February. I started it on the day that The Crown came out. And I watched all 10 episodes of season 4 of The Crown in one day because I had pneumonia and I couldn't go anywhere. And I knit the corrugated ribbing on the bottom of this, which you can see here. It's a pretty thick band of corrugated ribbing. There's like 20 rounds. And it took all day. Like it took almost all 10 hours of The Crown to knit the corrugated ribbed band. And then I finished it. I'm recording this on the 17th? Yeah, 17th of February. Thank you, Fitbit. And I just finished it last week. So it took a few months on and off. I saw it on Ravelry when I was browsing Fair Isle patterns, and I was buying a bunch of them to see if any of them would teach me how to make a neck steek. That is like the thing that I will always come back to in this series. I could not figure out how to do a neck steek. I just had no idea of the physics of it. And I wanted a pattern to tell me what to do. And this pattern did. This was the first pattern that explained, it doesn't show anything, like there are no pictures, but it just had neck. Here's how to do it. Put a bunch of stitches on hold, cast off your steek for the front, and then cast on another steek. And I was like, oh, that's where it is. It's just on the front. And then you sew it down in there. Where my neck steek? There it is. It's in there. I don't know if you can see it. Hard to see. It's dark colors. Anyway, if you're confused, again, there will be a tutorial at some point, like when I get to a neck steek on the next Fair Isle piece I'm knitting. I'll just show it, how to do it on a video to make that easy, because there are no videos about it and there's really no visuals at all. So it can be confusing. But yeah, so this pattern was clear enough that I could understand how the steek needed to be worked, and I did it, and I was so excited when I figured it out. It was like a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, that's how it works. Anyway, so speaking of not having a lot of visuals, a pattern like this is a traditional Fair Isle pattern. It is not very long. There's not very much information in it. There is enough information for you to knit the pattern if you're familiar with techniques like the three main techniques are steeking, just general steeking, like how to do it. So the fact that you need to cast on extra stitches and knit them in like a stripe sequence and then secure them in your method of choice, or not secure them if that's what floats your boat, and cut it. You need to know how to do that. You need to know how to do corrugated ribbing, which is how the cardigan is finished on all of the edges. So 2 bands on the sleeves, big band on the bottom, and then up each side of the cardigan and at the neck. So you need to know how to do it in the round and back and forth. I got really fed up with doing it back and forth on the bottom band because there were so many rounds, so I cast on my steek stitches early. Some patterns have you cast on the steek at the very beginning when you start the corrugated rib, and some patterns have you work the whole corrugated rib band back and forth, then cast on the steek when you start doing the Fair Isle patterning. I prefer to just cast it on right away, because if I would prefer to work corrugated ribbing in the round. Then you have to carry the yarns on the back of the work, which is normal for me. Although it's not like doing Fair Isle back and forth. So you can do it. Like I did it for the button bands and the neck band. It was just a little tedious. Okay, so, but like I said, the pattern's not very long. It's pretty sparse, but it does have all the information you need. So if you're really daunted by the brevity of the pattern, just make sure to read it clearly and make sure you know how to do all the techniques, and you should have no trouble. But again, be careful. Don't skip any steps, and like cross things off if you have a problem with that. Sometimes I use a highlighter so that I don't miss things. let's see. So there's 4 steeks. There's obviously one at the front. There's 2 steeks at the front though. There's the regular cardigan steek, and then when you get to the front of the neck shaping, you cast those steek stitches off. You put stitches on either side of that steek on hold, and you cast on another steek for the neck. And then you do your neck shaping around it to make the back of the neck higher, but you can still work in the round if you have a steek. And then you've got your 2 steeks at the arms right here and right here. So it's constructed like a traditional Fair Isle sweater. You knit it from the bottom up. So this is all one piece. The body is one piece. You have your steek at the front. You've got, once you get up to your armholes, you cast off some stitches or put them on hold, whatever your preference is for that, really. I can't remember what the pattern says. And you cast on steeks at the armholes. Keep going until you're done. Do your neck shaping. Put stitches for the back of the neck on hold, and then you open the steeks at the sleeves. You pick up the stitches around the sleeve and you knit downwards so that you're not sewing the sleeve, setting the sleeve in. It's easier to do it this way. I have done it both ways. I hate sewing in the sleeves. It's really stressful. You have to measure really carefully when you're doing your arm openings and your sleeves to make sure that it's going to fit properly and not be bunched up. So I recommend this method. And then, yeah, you knit the sleeve from here down, corrugated rib finishes, and then when you're all done with that, you cut, what do you do first? You do the neck steek first, or the neckband. So you do the neckband first, cut open the neck steek, and you knit the neckband by knitting. You knit it back and forth, so you pick up the stitches that you put on hold on the front and the back, and you pick up some stitches on the side, same number on each side, ideally. And then you open the front and you pick up the button bands that go all the way down, or just the bands. There's no buttons on mine because it would close, but it would be really tight if I closed it. So didn't. Okay, so colors. I'm going to talk about colors, and then I will show you, like you'll see the desk. There will be a light, so you'll be able to see really well. And I will show you all the colors. Okay, so in the original, I'll show you the picture of the original. It is knit in Jamieson's of Shetland Spindrift. Is it that way? Right, there we go. Here's a picture. It's all purples with some blues and pinks. I liked that, but I wanted to knit it, number 1, in 2-ply jumper weight because it's easier to get 2-ply jumper weight in larger quantities. There's a good lighting shot of the original, also linked in the show notes if you prefer to look at it on your own screen. So I wanted to use 2-ply jumper weight, Jamieson & Smith 2-ply jumper weight. You can see it's marked. The colors are all numbered. So when I first started, I numbered all the balls so that I would know which ones I was supposed to use and where, because the charts in the original obviously have their choices of colors. So I would use the legend to figure out what color was what number. And that was a little confusing at first, but eventually you just remember because it repeats. Okay, so there's our purples with some blue and pink contrasts. Mine is all blues with some purple contrasts and a little bit of gray. There's one gray. So I tried to be as faithful as possible to the shade and the quality, so whether it was heathered or solid yarn, when I was swapping. And I did a pretty good job, except I had one that was not like high contrast enough with the color it was supposed to contrast with, so I swapped it out, and I'll explain that and show you where. So I've got one, like the very first Fair Isle band has a different color in this part. You can see here clearly I used a gray and then a light blue, and I had a purple and a light blue, and the light purple didn't contrast enough with the dark purple, so I swapped it for gray. And that's fine. I actually do that a lot. Like there's like one color that I see and I'm like, oh, that's not high contrast enough, let me swap it, but I don't want to rip it out. So the bottom one's different, but no one notices. It's just my little thing that I do. Okay, so I used all of them are 2-ply jumper weight. That's number 3. except one of them is Supreme Jumper Weight. So this comes again in 50-gram balls. It's basically the same thing. It's just not dyed, and because it's not dyed, it's a little less processed, and it's a tiny bit thicker. There's a little tiny bit less yardage. I mean, this is twice the size. So again, there's 172 meters, 188 yards, and 50 grams. Whereas here we've got 115 meters or 125 yards. So yeah, this one's a little thicker, but it's not really an issue in Fair Isle work. So I'm going to stop here, change the point of view so you can see all the colors, and I'll explain some of the things about the cardigan, and then I'll come back and tell you a few more things. Okay. Okay. So here is the cardigan from another angle. There you go. So there's a light on it now, so you can kind of see. You can also look at the pictures on Ravelry, which my page is linked in the show notes, so you can see that there. This is kind of coming out here. It is, if you're like not in the sun kind of washes it out, but because the colors are sort of like cooler, if it's like a bright day but there's cloud cover, the colors look very bright. And the day that I took pictures of it was that kind of day, so the colors they show up very bright in the pictures. Okay, so well, it was supposed to be 9 colors in this, but it ended up 10 because, all right. So you can see in the ribbed band, there's this purple here that then I used here in the first Fair Isle band. And I did not like the low contrast, so I swapped it in the next one for this gray. I liked that better, so I kept it, but there's like a little purple one at the bottom. It's kind of nice. That's where I am. Okay, this is mirrored, so it's a little hard. Okay, so here are the colors. I'm just gonna fold that. I'll still be able to see it here. Okay, so there's 3 main background colors. There's a navy. Where's my notes here? So 21 blue. This is a navy. This is the navy of the band here. There's navy. I don't know if you can see this super well, but then there's a darker navy. Darker navy, that's this one. It looks kind of black in here, but anyway. Then there's this one, the one that goes in between each one. This is a purple. It is FC56, blue purple. I don't know why they call it blue purple, because it's actually heathered with green, which you can see that. Color number 3, heathered with green. Okay, so those are my main background colors. Then I've got 1280 blue. 1280 blue is like a lavender sky blue mix. That's used here, and then it's used in the middle here, one of the colors of the big bands. Then I've got 14 blue. Oh, and this one is obviously heathered. You can see this one's not heathered. This is just a sky blue, number 14. That's used in this band, and it's also used, it's the second color from the middle in the larger bands. Then I used 123 mix. This is a lavender kind of gray heathered. I used this in my lapwing sweater, which you can see me wearing in several videos. And at some point, if you're watching this when it's released, there's not a video about this sweater, but there will be. I have recorded it, it's just not up yet. So this is a kind of lavender blue. This is in the middle here, so it's harder to see. It's supposed to be a higher contrast with the others. I did that on purpose. Then I've got FC21, which is lavender tan mix. I knit my vanilla sweater out of this, so if you want to see what the color looks like knit in a whole sweater, you can go to episode 3. This one is, I haven't talked about this one yet. Now that one, this purple, this is in the middle of the smaller stars, and it's also the edge color of the larger patterns. Then there's FC52 mix. This is kind of like purple and blue and pinkish and gray all mixed together. This is a very bespoke color. Can you see it? Yeah, kind of see it there. This is used as just the only places it's used is in between each pattern as the 1x1 color palette. If you watch Hazel Tyndall's knitting videos, she calls these mice teeth, which I think is a really cute name. It's also used in the ribbed band. It's the middle color. So I've got for the corrugated rib here, this is 131, this is 52, and then that's the, what name is this? 123 mix. This is the one that only got used once, and then also in the edging ribs there. But it did go, so I kept it in the edging. So this is the one I swapped it for, to Supreme Jumper Weight in color 2003 Shayla. But again, I didn't use this one in the bands. I kept the purple. I thought it looked nice. So there are all of my colors, and there's the cardigan. So I'm gonna move this and not drop any. I tend to wind these into balls when they get too kind of floppy. So you can see that those are balled up. This one I took from another project I'm using this in. So still in a ball. This one's still pretty big. But yeah, they tend to get floppy if you pull them from the middle. After a while, I always just roll them into balls to keep them nice and neat. Okay, so I'm just gonna show the motifs up close quickly. Let's do this. Let's just lay it out. Okay, so we've got our one in the middle here. This repeats a lot. The colors are symmetrical around each band. So the big ones have the blues on the outside or the inside and the grays on the outside, and then the smaller ones have the grays on the inside and the blues on the outside. So this is a pretty traditional Shetland band here. It's not all the way symmetrical, but it's somewhat symmetrical. I mean, it's like a wave, and then it has the two little crosses there in the peaks and the valleys. Okay, so there's that. And then there's this one, which is a smaller star. This is kind of an OXO. There's the stylized X and then the O in the middle. This is knit with just two colors on the background of the darker blue. And then I have there's two different bigger ones. So there's one. This is an 8-pointed star with some little things shooting off of it. Kind of cute. And then there's this one here. This one's different. As you can see, this is rounder. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but both of those are more traditional in Norwegian knitting. And I'm going to change the camera angle and show you some books that are useful for sort of understanding the connection between Shetland and Norwegian knitting. So you've just seen that there are some stylized Norwegian stars on this cardigan. This isn't really a star, but it's a Norwegian motif, and then there's one here. You can see them again on the sleeves. There they are. Okay. So this is really common. Fair Isle and Norwegian knitting styles have always had a lot in common because, I mean, before like the modern world, people got everywhere with boats. And Fair Isle and Shetland are islands, not that far away from Norway. So sea trading routes were constantly moving people around those places, and people would have examples of knitting. And that's probably how these types of patterns got to Shetland and Fair Isle in the first place. Although nobody knows exactly when or who or how. But again, as I've said before, there are some interesting conspiracy theories about that. Not necessarily conspiracy theories, but you know, people have different opinions. So you can read about this connection in lots of books, like the Shetland-Norway connection. My favorite essays are in about this specific thing and about lots of stuff about Shetland Fair Isle knitting. This book, The Vintage Shetland Project by Susan Crawford. So I have definitely talked about this in other videos. I'm not sure if they're uploaded yet though, so I'll explain again. It's a huge book. It's like 500 pages. Yeah, almost. There's 468 pages by the time we're in the index. It weighs about 7 pounds. Maybe not. It feels like it weighs more than my old MacBook though, and my old MacBook weighed 5 pounds. It's really big. It's really heavy. It's amazing. So what Susan did is that she went to the Shetland Museum and she recreated a bunch of patterns that were in the museum. And she published them in this book alongside a beautiful gallery of the photographs of people wearing the recreated pieces and a bunch of amazing, brilliant essays. She is a great historian of wool and wool and knitting in the British Isles, and she has a lot of interesting pattern collections where she recreates vintage patterns. So if you're interested in that, check her out. As I've said before, maybe I'll say again, I don't know if I'll ever knit any of her patterns like as they are in this book, because a lot of them have things like puffy sleeves, or they're a style that I wouldn't necessarily wear, but I like the charts a lot. Like, this is gorgeous. Look at this. And the stylized photography is so great. Sleeves are kind of puffy, and look how useful that would be for using up all your small balls of half the color. This is one that I've considered knitting. I would love to knit this in all natural shades, plus like maybe some red. That might be coming soon to a Tiny Desk knitting episode near you. This is really nice, and it's knit in all the natural shades. So she uses her own yarn line. She's got several different yarns in her line for a lot of these projects, but she often gives you like, use Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight in, or lace weight, or whatever, in these colors, and you need this many. And she's got a wide variety of sizes, and it's amazing. But you can buy a digital copy of this, but it doesn't come with the essays, so I recommend getting a hard copy. I got mine at the Woolly Thistle. You can get it, I'm sure you can get it at various places, but there are some really interesting essays again in the front. So how many are there? I'll find out how many there are. A lot. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 15. They're super cool. There's like Shetland Suffragettes, The Evolution of the Spencer, which is a type of shirt. In Search of Jeannie. Jeannie Jarmson was a Shetland designer who was really brilliant. Ethel Henry, Innovator and Rule Breaker. Very cool. A Testament of Love. And then this one, The Norwegian Connection. So she tells you all about the connection between Norway and Shetland in World War II. So the Nazis had occupied Norway. That's happened in 1940, and a bunch of Norwegians came to Shetland. Norwegian people came to Shetland, and they spent like the rest of the war there in some cases. So they got to know each other really well. They got to know each other's knitting really well. She talks about here this book, Norwegian Knitting Designs by Anniken Sibern-Bonn. Not sure how to pronounce that. This is a book from 1930s. It was finally translated into English in 1952, and that is another resource for Shetlanders that they probably used. So speaking of that, you can get Norwegian Knitting Designs 90 years later. A new look at the classic collection of Scandinavian motifs and patterns. So you can see Anniken Sibern-Bonn there, and then Winkerold, which is the modern editor. So this is great. It's really cool. There's lots of really well-written patterns. They're all a little bit more modern. Here's one. There's sweaters. There's kids stuff. There's accessories. Socks. Some socks. There's mittens. If you like Norwegian knitting, I'm sure you know about the mittens. Let's see if I can find a, oh, that's a chart. I don't want to show a chart. Sorry, I should have marked some pages here. Oh, that's a good one. If I can find, there we go. Some mittens. Very traditional looking Solbu mittens. And then in the back of this, you get a reproduction of the original. This is in English, so the English translation, but it's like patterns for socks. Mitten. It's a lot of motifs, charts and stuff. It's very cool. So this was a resource for Shetlanders too, which is pretty cool. Starting in the 50s when, I mean, you could have got this in Norwegian and just taken the charts. It's not that hard to I mean, you don't have to translate a chart. So if you want to use the charts, you don't need to read Norwegian, which is cool. So she's got an essay in the Vintage Shetland Project called The Eight-Pointed Star, which you may know is very Shetlandese. It's a particular, so she says, the first paragraph of this essay is, we have looked at the Norwegian influence on Shetland knitting in broader terms, but now I want to focus on a very particular knitted item that uses many versions and interpretations of the eight-pointed star or flower. So she talks more detail about the Selbu star. Okay, so that's, once again, the Vintage Shetland Project, or as I like to call it, the Bible. Okay, so one last thing, just a little bit about technique construction. So this piece is worked in the round. In the round, you don't stop and do like fake seams with a purl stitch halfway through like you would do in some sweaters or pullovers. The reason you don't need to do that is because the stitch pattern has only 24 stitches per repeat. So as long as the full pattern or the full stitch count has 24 stitches in the repeat plus one so that the fronts can be symmetrical, you're fine. Whereas like sometimes if you have a larger pattern, you'd need to, and like the final stitch count is not divisible by the number of the stitches in the horizontal pattern, you would need to center the pattern on the front and the back and do seams, and that means you're not starting at the beginning of the pattern repeat. So you don't have to do that here. This one goes all the way around, but then when you get to the sleeves, you're going to separate some stitches off here. You're either going to cast them off or you're going to put them on hold so that you can pick them up later when you're knitting the sleeves downwards. At that point, you're going to have a gap. So you need to be careful and pay attention to where the chart starts and stops once you get to the sleeve split. And it's not a split, it's like a sleeve steek. So you're going to cast on your steek bridge, and then you do some shaping here. So you're decreasing on either side of the sleeve here to shape the bodice, sort of, so that it gets narrower here like that. It's not flat. Could do it that way, but that's not what it says in the pattern, so I didn't do it that way. So it's really important to note that once the shaping starts, you need to pay careful attention to where, check your place in the pattern. So when you starts here, and you're gonna knit that way around the back and around the front. So when you start here, you'll start at the beginning of the pattern, but then when you start the back, it won't be the beginning. So you're gonna keep going, doing your decreases. Pay attention to where you were the last time. And then again, when you start here, you'll just wanna pay attention to where you left off here, because these two are gonna match, if that makes any sense at all. And then on the sleeves, when you're gonna taper the sleeve, so it's gonna start wider, and then you're gonna do decreases there on the bottom. And same thing, you're gonna have a certain number of 24 stitch repeats within the sleeve. You'll start out with four or five, depending on the size you knit, and you'll decrease it. And you won't, because you wanna center the sleeve or the pattern on the sleeve, you won't be starting at the beginning every time. So you need to pay attention to where you are there. So the way that I do that is that I put a stitch marker right before the first full repeat of 24 stitches, and then I just count backwards. Like if there's 6 stitches before the marker, when I start the next round of the sleeve, I just look at the chart and I count 6 stitches backwards from the beginning or the end, and then I start there, and then the marker just moves with you as you do the decreases. So that's useful. And I think that's all. This video is probably too long as it is. If you have any questions, you can comment or email me, barnabyknits@gmail.com. And have a good one, and keep knitting. And you can also see a complete list of the original colors of this and Shetland Spindrift on my Ravelry page, and also in the show notes. So Have a good one.